The crack of her body hitting the training mat echoed through the hall as dust rose around her. 200 recruits laughed, watching another victim of the legendary instructor's brutal demonstration. Pinned beneath his weight, she seemed finished, just another candidate about to wash out. His whispered taunt about her brother was meant to break her completely. Instead, something changed in her eyes. In one fluid motion that defied physics and years of combat doctrine, she reversed his supposedly inescapable hold, leaving the undefeated master on his back, staring at the ceiling in shock. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If stories of hidden strength finally revealed speak to you, consider subscribing for more tales of justice and redemption. The rhythmic pounding of 200 pairs of boots on pavement echoed through the converted missile silo that now served as Apex Academy's underground training facility. Morning PT had commenced precisely at 05:30, as it did every day, with recruits arranged in perfect formation for their 5-mile run through the facility's winding corridors. Evelyn Reese maintained her position with practiced precision, 15th from the front in the center column. Not close enough to the front to draw attention as a standout, not far enough back to be noticed as a straggler. Just another gray uniform in a sea of identical recruits, her brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her expression carefully neutral. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she matched her pace exactly to those around her. She could have run faster, much faster, but that would defeat the purpose. For 3 months, she had calibrated every performance to land squarely in the middle of the pack. Average scores in marksmanship, decent but unremarkable times on obstacle courses, solid but forgettable answers in tactical theory. "Pick up the pace, you worthless maggots," bellowed Sergeant Phelan Wolcott, the drill instructor whose perpetual scowl had become as familiar to the recruits as the gray walls surrounding them. His voice echoed off the concrete as he singled out a struggling recruit near the back. "Bellamy, my grandmother moves faster than you, and she's been dead for 12 years. Evelyn kept her eyes forward, breathing steadily as they rounded the final corridor. While the other recruits focused on maintaining formation, her peripheral vision cataloged the security cameras mounted at each intersection. Noting their coverage angles and the 3-second rotation pattern of the ones designed to eliminate blind spots, she mentally updated her map of the facility, adding the 2 new guards stationed at the entrance to Level B since yesterday. As they completed the run and fell into formation in the main training yard, Evelyn caught sight of Colonel Zephrine Blackwood observing from her usual position on the elevated platform that overlooked the yard. The training director's silver hair was pulled back. Severely, her uniform immaculate, her expression coolly analytical as she made notes on her tablet. Beside her stood 2 men in suits that practically screamed Government Oversight Committee. Sergeant Wolcott dismissed the recruits to shower and prepare for morning classes. As they dispersed, Evelyn noticed a small interaction that others missed. Colonel Blackwood pointing toward a recruit named Tennyson, one of the top performers, and the suited men nodding with approval. Tennyson was summoned to the platform, where Blackwood spoke to him briefly before directing him toward the restricted elevator that led to the lower levels marked Advanced Training. It was the 3rd recruit this week to be selected for special attention. None of the previous selections had returned to regular training. When asked, instructors simply said they had graduated to specialized roles. In the women's locker room, Evelyn maintained her invisible persona, keeping to herself, as she changed into fresh uniform. Around her, other female recruits chatted about the upcoming afternoon demonstration by Master Sergeant Walsh, the legendary hand-to-hand combat instructor, whose techniques were rumored to be unbeatable. "I heard Walsh put 3 instructors in medical last year during a demonstration," said one recruit, eyes wide. "They say he was special forces before this, but like, the kind no one talks about." "He's the one who selects for blacklight, right?" another asked, her voice dropping. "My bunkmate said people who impress Walsh disappear to the lower levels and come back different." "If they come back at all," a third added. Evelyn absorbed the information while appearing not to listen, a skill she had perfected long before coming to Apex. The name Blacklight surfaced in recruit gossip occasionally, always in whispers, always with a mixture of fear and ambition. Official channels never acknowledged any program by that name. As she closed her locker, Harlow Damari approached, flanked by her usual admirers. Harlow had ranked at the top of most assessments since day 1 and never let anyone forget it. Her family had military connections going back generations, and she carried herself with the absolute certainty of someone destined for command. "Hey, Reese," Harlow said, looking Evelyn up and down with thinly veiled contempt. "Betting pool says you'll be cut by month's end. Nothing personal, but we can't afford dead weight in the field." The other recruits snickered on cue. Evelyn gave a small, embarrassed smile, as if the comment had landed exactly as intended. "I'm just doing my best," she replied, her voice deliberately pitched slightly higher than her natural speaking tone, adding a hint of uncertainty that her instructors had long ago trained out of her. "Your best might not be good enough," Harlow said with mock sympathy, patting Evelyn's shoulder condescendingly before moving away. Alone for a moment, Evelyn allowed her expression to shift briefly, the mask of mediocrity slipping to reveal something harder, more focused. From her locker, she removed a small photograph hidden in the spine of her tactical manual. A young man in an Apex uniform, his features similar enough to her own to suggest siblings. Archer Reese, her brother, had graduated at the top of his class 3 years earlier. The image brought back the memory of the coded message that had arrived 6 months ago. The same photograph, but with his face blacked out, and 3 words encrypted in a pattern only the two of them knew. "Blacklight is real." 2 weeks later, the official notification: Archer Reese, training casualty. Body unrecoverable due to nature of exercise. Posthumous commendation for service. Evelyn tucked the photo away and reassumed her carefully crafted persona before heading to tactical theory class. She took her usual seat in the middle of the room, not too close to the front, not too far back. The instructor, Lieutenant Breyer, began a lesson on infiltration strategies for hostile environments. When called upon, Evelyn gave an answer that was technically correct, but lacked the insight or creativity that would draw special attention. As she spoke, she noticed Colonel Blackwood observing from the doorway, those calculating eyes missing nothing. The training director made a note on her tablet before moving on. Lunchtime brought more observations. Evelyn sat at a table with mid-tier recruits, engaging in just enough conversation to seem sociable but not memorable. From her position, she could see 2 senior instructors speaking in hushed tones near the exit. Their conversation would have been inaudible to most, but Evelyn had other advantages. "Another successful blacklight integration," the older instructor said. "Subject 42 accepted the neural framework without rejection. Memory adjustment protocols completed this morning." "That's 4 this month," replied the younger one. "Accelerated schedule. Is the director pushing timelines?" "Above our pay grade, Rosario. Just focus on identifying candidates with the right psychological profiles." The instructors moved on, unaware they had been overheard. Evelyn continued eating, her expression unchanged, though her mind processed the implications. Neural framework, memory adjustment. The pieces were beginning to form a disturbing picture. By afternoon, anticipation had built throughout the facility. All 200 recruits were assembled in the main combat training hall, arranged in a circle around the central mat, where Master Sergeant Dominic Walsh would conduct his famous hand-to-hand combat demonstration. The room hummed with nervous energy. Walsh entered precisely on schedule, and the room fell silent immediately. At 38, he moved with the lethal grace of a predator, his physical condition a testament to relentless discipline. His face bore a thin scar from left temple to jaw, and his eyes surveyed the recruits with cold assessment. "Combat is truth," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. "You can lie on your application, you can lie to your instructors, you can even lie to yourselves about your capabilities. But when you're facing an opponent who wants to kill you, all lies evaporate." He gestured, and 2 male recruits stepped forward, both top performers who had dominated previous combat exercises. Walsh positioned them on the mat. "Attack me, both of you, don't hold back." What followed was a brutal demonstration of skill that seemed almost superhuman. The recruits attacked with everything they had, and Walsh dismantled their efforts with methodical precision. Each takedown was executed perfectly, each counter timed to maximize psychological impact. Within minutes, both recruits were on the mat, one clutching his wrist, the other trying to catch his breath. "Adequate effort," Walsh said, not even winded. "But predictable. In the field, predictability gets you killed." The double doors at the far end of the training hall opened, and Colonel Blackwood entered with her entourage of suited observers. The officials took positions along the wall, their expressions revealing nothing as they watched Walsh continue his demonstration with two more volunteers. Evelyn maintained her unremarkable stance among the other recruits, but her mind worked rapidly. The observers' presence was significant. These weren't the usual oversight committee members. Their body language suggested higher authority, possibly Joint Chiefs level. Something important was happening today. Walsh systematically worked through several more demonstrations, each showcasing different techniques against various body types and fighting styles. The recruits watched with a mixture of awe and dread, knowing that soon they would be expected to implement these same techniques in their own training. "Combat doesn't care about your gender, your size, or your excuses," Walsh announced, scanning the circle of recruits. "A proper technique, executed with precision and commitment, works regardless of physical attributes." His gaze settled on the female recruits, who made up roughly 30% of the cohort. "I need a female volunteer to demonstrate how these principles apply, regardless of size differential, someone who hasn't participated yet." The female recruits tensed collectively. Walsh's demonstrations, while educational, were not gentle. No one stepped forward. Walsh's eyes continued their circuit of the room until they locked with Evelyn's. Something flickered in his expression, so brief that no one else would have caught it. "You," he said, pointing directly at her. "The unremarkable one. Center mat, now." A ripple of relief went through the other female recruits, followed by the subtle shifting of attention that preceded anticipated entertainment. Harlow Damari smirked openly, exchanging glances with her circle of top performers. Evelyn stepped forward, allowing herself to show appropriate nervousness. She moved onto the mat with deliberately awkward movements, positioning herself as if unsure of proper stance. But beneath this carefully constructed facade, her mind was calculating angles, distances, analyzing Walsh's posture for tells. Something wasn't right. Why had Walsh selected her specifically? Had her cover been compromised? Was this a test? "This technique," Walsh explained to the observers and recruits, "uses an opponent's own momentum against them, regardless of size advantage. It's particularly effective for smaller operators against larger threats." Without further warning, Walsh moved. To the untrained eye, it was a blur of motion too fast to follow. He closed the distance to Evelyn, executed a perfect leg sweep, combined with an upper body manipulation that took her off her feet completely. The impact of her body hitting the mat echoed through the hall, dust rising around her as Walsh seamlessly transitioned into a pinning position that immobilized her arms. Laughter rippled through the assembled recruits. The sound contained the universal relief of those glad to not be the current focus of attention, mixed with the casual cruelty that often emerges in high-pressure training environments. Pinned beneath Walsh's weight, their faces close, Evelyn maintained her role as overwhelmed recruit. But Walsh's next words, spoken so quietly that only she could hear them, changed everything. "Pathetic," he murmured. "Your brother at least showed potential before washing out." The mention of her brother sent a jolt through Evelyn's mind. This was no random selection. Walsh knew who she was, or at least knew about Archer. The realization triggered a micro-reaction, a momentary widening of her eyes, a slight tension in her jaw that only someone with Walsh's training would notice. And he did notice. His expression confirmed it. In that fraction of a second, Evelyn made a critical decision. The smart play was to maintain her cover, to struggle ineffectively, to be humiliated as expected, to remain forgettably average. That was the mission protocol. Stay invisible until you locate the evidence. But Walsh's mention of Archer changed the calculation. If he knew about her brother, what else did he know? Was this a trap? A test, or something else entirely? Evelyn met Walsh's eyes, and something shifted in her gaze. The carefully maintained facade of mediocrity dissolved, replaced by cold, professional assessment. Walsh saw the change, and his eyes widened slightly in recognition, but by then it was too late. Evelyn's body, which had been seemingly helpless a moment before, suddenly moved with fluid precision. She executed a perfect counter to Walsh's pin, exploiting a weight distribution vulnerability that only someone with advanced training would recognize. Using his own momentum and leverage points that shouldn't have been accessible from her position, she reversed their situations completely. The movement was so unexpected, so flawlessly executed, that Walsh had no time to counter. One moment he was in complete control, The next, he found himself on his back, Evelyn controlling him in an advanced hold that wasn't taught in any standard military program. The training hall fell silent. The laughter died instantly, replaced by collective shock. For the first time in Apex Academy history, the legendary Master Sergeant Walsh had been bested during a demonstration, and by the most unlikely recruit imaginable. Colonel Blackwood had been observing with professional detachment until that moment. Now she leaned forward, her interest visibly intensifying. She made a rapid note on her tablet, then whispered something to one of the suited observers beside her. Evelyn's mind raced as she realized her critical error. In responding to Walsh's provocation about her brother, she had revealed abilities that no ordinary recruit should possess. Worse, she had demonstrated a counter to an advanced technique that was only taught in one program, the highly classified Northern Lights initiative that officially didn't exist. Her cover was blown. 3 months of careful work, of deliberate mediocrity, undone in 5 seconds of instinctive reaction. She released Walsh and scrambled back, attempting to look surprised at her own success, as if it had been luck or accident rather than skill. But the damage was done. Walsh's expression as he rose to his feet confirmed it. He recognized the technique. He knew exactly what it meant. For a long, tense moment, the entire hall remained frozen in collective disbelief. Then Walsh did something no one expected. He straightened his uniform, brushed off the dust from the mat, and addressed the stunned recruits. "This," he said, his voice carrying through the silence, "is why assumptions get you killed. Appearances deceive. Underestimate an opponent based on their size, gender, or previous performance. And you might find yourself staring at the ceiling, wondering what just happened." His eyes locked with Evelyn's, a complex message passing between them that no one else could interpret. Then, in an unprecedented move that sent new shockwaves through the assembled recruits, Walsh rendered a perfect military salute to Evelyn. "Your technique is familiar," he said, emphasizing the word in a way that carried significant meaning. "We clearly have much to discuss." Colonel Blackwood approached the mat, her calculated gaze fixed on Evelyn with new intensity. "The rest of you are dismissed," she announced to the recruits. "Training resumes at 0800 tomorrow." As the bewildered recruits filed out of the training hall, their expressions toward Evelyn had completely transformed. Gone was the dismissive disregard, replaced by confused respect and, in many cases, wary reassessment. Harlow Damari's face showed particular shock as she exited, glancing back repeatedly as if seeing Evelyn for the first time. "Recruit Reese," Colonel Blackwood said once the hall had emptied, except for Walsh and the government observers. "Please follow me to the assessment room. It seems we have much to discuss about your unique qualifications." The assessment room was clinically sterile, white walls, recessed lighting, a single metal table bolted to the floor with 3 chairs arranged around it. No windows, no decorations, nothing to suggest this space was designed for human comfort. Evelyn noted the 2 visible cameras in the upper corners and suspected at least 3 more concealed in the walls or ceiling. Standard interrogation setup. Colonel Blackwood gestured for Evelyn to take the seat facing the door. Another psychological tactic. Keep the subject watching the entrance, anticipating interruption, maintaining the subtle anxiety of potential discovery. Walsh positioned himself by the wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The government observers had not followed them into the room, but Evelyn had no doubt they were watching through the surveillance system. 3 months of deliberately underperforming, Blackwood began, her voice crisp and evaluative as she settled into the chair across from Evelyn. "Very convincing. Our initial assessments classified you as unremarkable but adequate, support role material at best." She placed her tablet on the table, displaying Evelyn's fabricated personnel file. "Which agency sent you? CIA, INSCOM, or is this a DoD audit?" Evelyn maintained her recruit posture for a moment longer, then subtly shifted. Her shoulders squared, spine straightened, eyes focused with professional clarity. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable, the carefully constructed facade of the uncertain recruit replaced by the bearing of a trained operative. "I'm not at liberty to discuss my operational parameters," she replied, her voice now pitched in its natural register, lower and more confident than the one she had affected for 3 months. Walsh studied her with new intensity. "That reversal technique, Northern Lights program, classified Module 7, They discontinued that training after the Jakarta incident. Evelyn's eyes flickered toward him with new calculation. Very few people knew about Northern Lights, fewer still about Jakarta. Walsh's knowledge suggested access to information far above his apparent position as a combat instructor. "Where is my brother?" she asked directly, abandoning pretense. "Archer Reese, Blacklight Subject 37, officially listed as a training casualty, but he sent me a warning before disappearing." Blackwood and Walsh exchanged a meaningful glance that confirmed Evelyn's suspicions. They both knew exactly who Archer was. "Your brother performed exceptionally well in our program," Blackwood said carefully. "His genetic profile and psychological evaluation made him an ideal candidate." "Candidate for what?" Evelyn pressed, though she had already pieced together much of the answer from fragments gathered over 3 months of surveillance. Instead of answering directly, Blackwood turned to Walsh. "Your assessment, Master Sergeant, given what we just witnessed." Walsh pushed away from the wall, moving to stand at the table's edge. "The reversal she executed isn't something you can fake or learn through observation. That's muscle memory from thousands of repetitions under stress conditions. Northern Lights Specialty Program, minimum 3 years of advanced training." He focused on Evelyn. "You weren't just in the program. You were one of its primary success stories, weren't you?" Evelyn remained silent, neither confirming nor denying. "Northern Lights was terminated 5 years ago," Blackwood noted, studying Evelyn with renewed interest. "All operatives were reassigned or decommissioned. There's no record of an Evelyn Reese in that program." "There wouldn't be," Walsh replied. "Northern Lights operatives worked under multiple identities, often simultaneously. Part of the protocol." He leaned forward slightly. "What was your designation? Based on your technique pattern, I'd guess you were in Echo Section, possibly E12 or E17. E14, Evelyn answered after a calculated pause. Revealing this much gave away nothing they couldn't already deduce from her combat performance. "Where is my brother?" Walsh's expression shifted subtly, something like respect or possibly recognition crossing his features. "Your brother isn't dead. He's been integrated. And I've been working to find someone with the skills to help me expose what Blacklight really does." This statement sent a jolt through Evelyn that she carefully controlled, keeping her expression neutral, despite the surge of hope his words triggered. Archer, alive. After months believing the worst, the confirmation struck her like a physical force. "Integrated into what?" she asked, watching Walsh carefully for deception. Blackwood's posture had tensed at Walsh's statement, her eyes narrowing as she regarded him with new suspicion. "Master Sergeant, you're approaching classified territory that exceeds this recruit's clearance, regardless of her apparent training." "She's not a recruit, Colonel," Walsh replied without taking his eyes off Evelyn. "She's Northern Lights E14, which means she has higher clearance than anyone in this room, except possibly you. And she deserves to know what happened to her brother." The tension in the room crystallized as the two senior officers engaged in a silent power struggle, with Evelyn carefully observing each micro-expression and body language shift. Something was happening beneath the surface, an unspoken conflict she hadn't anticipated. "I was the original combat instructor for both Blacklight and Northern Lights programs," Walsh finally said, breaking the standoff. "I helped design the training protocols, the combat integration systems, the assessment metrics. I know exactly what these programs were designed to do." "Were?" Evelyn caught the past tense immediately. "Northern Lights was designed to create autonomous field operatives capable of functioning without direct oversight. Soldiers who could make complex ethical judgments under extreme pressure," Walsh explained. "Blacklight had a different objective." Blackwood rose abruptly. "This briefing is over. Recruit Reese, or whatever your actual designation is, you are confined to quarters pending security evaluation. Master Sergeant Walsh, report to my office immediately." Neither Walsh nor Evelyn moved. "Northern Lights trained elite operatives like you," Walsh continued as if Blackwood hadn't spoken. "Blacklight doesn't train them. It creates them through neurological manipulation." "Master Sergeant, that's enough," Blackwood snapped, her composure cracking for the first time. "They're implanting neural interfaces," Walsh pressed on. "Direct brain-computer interfaces that allow external control of subjects. Your brother wasn't selected for advanced training. He was selected for complete neural integration because his psychological profile showed high resistance to authority. Exactly the trait Northern Lights valued and Blacklight eliminates." Evelyn's mind raced, connecting fragments of information she had gathered over her 3 months undercover. The recruits who disappeared to advanced training, the whispers about memory adjustment protocols, the observational data suggesting personality changes in those who occasionally returned. "Colonel," she said, turning to Blackwood with deadly calm, "is my brother being controlled through neural implants?" Blackwood's expression hardened into something cold and resolute. "Your brother is serving his country in ways most soldiers can only dream of. Blacklight subjects become the perfect operators, precise, fearless, completely loyal. No hesitation, no ethical conflicts, no disobedience. They execute exactly as directed." "They become puppets," Walsh corrected, disgust evident in his voice. "I signed on to train soldiers, not create remote-controlled weapons." "You sign non-disclosure agreements that prevent this very conversation," Blackwood replied icily. "And you've just compromised national security by revealing classified information to an uncleared individual." "She's not uncleared," Walsh countered. "Northern Lights E-14 would have Umbra-level access, which means she has every right to know that her brother is being used as a test subject for military mind control." The confirmation hit Evelyn like a physical blow, though she allowed none of it to show on her face. Archer was alive, but effectively imprisoned in his own body. The implications were horrifying, but at least now she had confirmation of what she had been sent to discover. "Who sent you, Evelyn?" Walsh asked directly. "After Northern Lights was shut down, where did you go? Who activated you for this mission?" Before she could answer, the assessment room door opened. 2 security officers entered, followed by the government. Observers from earlier. The older of the suited men stepped forward. "Colonel Blackwood, this interview is now under Oversight Committee jurisdiction. Master Sergeant Walsh, you will remain. Operative Reese, you will continue to answer questions." Blackwood looked momentarily surprised before masking it with professional composure. "Director Quinlan, with respect, this facility falls under my command. Any questioning of my personnel should include me. Not when the questioning concerns potential ethical breaches in programs under your supervision, Colonel," Director Quinlan replied calmly. "Please wait outside. We'll speak afterward." For a moment, it seemed Blackwood might refuse. Then her military discipline reasserted itself. With a tight nod, she exited the room, leaving Evelyn and Walsh with the Oversight Committee. Director Quinlan took the seat Blackwood had vacated. "Operative Reese, we've been monitoring Blacklight for 6 months following concerns raised by Master Sergeant Walsh. Your insertion was not authorized by any official channel that we can identify. So, I'll ask again, who sent you?" Evelyn weighed her options carefully. The situation had evolved beyond her initial mission parameters. If Walsh had already been working with Oversight, and if Quinlan was legitimately investigating Blacklight, her objectives might align with theirs. "Northern Lights wasn't completely disbanded," she answered finally. "A core group was maintained off the books, operating under the designation Echo Contingency. We monitor for ethical breaches in classified programs, particularly those involving former Northern Lights assets." "Like your brother," Walsh supplied. "Yes. When Archer's coded warning came through followed by a falsified death notification, Echo activated me for infiltration. My mission was to confirm Blacklight's true nature and, if possible, locate and extract Archer." Quinlan nodded thoughtfully. "That aligns with our intelligence. Walsh has been feeding us information for months, but we needed uncompromised confirmation before moving against a program with Blacklight's level of political protection." "Political protection?" Evelyn asked. "Blacklight has supporters at the highest levels," Walsh explained. "The promise of perfectly obedient super soldiers is too tempting for certain military and intelligence factions. They don't care about the ethical implications of stripping human autonomy as long as they get effective weapons." "How many subjects have been processed?" Evelyn asked, dreading the answer. 43 successful integrations so far," Quinlan replied grimly, "including your brother. The early subjects experienced significant neurological degradation within months. The newer subjects, including Archer, are showing better stability but complete subordination to command protocols." Evelyn processed this information with the compartmentalized efficiency her training had instilled. The horror of what had been, done to her brother, to all the subjects, was locked away to be dealt with later. Now was the time for action. "What happens next?" she asked. "We need evidence," Quinlan said. Documented proof of what blacklight is doing, ideally with video confirmation of the procedures and their effects. Something irrefutable that can be presented to the Joint Chiefs and congressional oversight. The subjects are kept in a secured medical wing on Sublevel C, Walsh added. Access is restricted to blacklight personnel with alpha clearance. Even I can't get in without Blackwood's authorization. Evelyn considered the challenge. But you could get me in. Possibly, Walsh agreed, but it would trigger every security protocol in the facility. We'd have minutes at most before security response. Minutes are all we need if we can broadcast what we find, Quinlan suggested. The facility's communication systems include an emergency override that can transmit to all monitors simultaneously. Originally designed for evacuation announcements, but it could serve our purpose. You've been planning this, Evelyn realized. We've been waiting for the right opportunity, Walsh corrected. Blackwood is careful. The Blacklight Medical Wing is isolated from external networks, and physical access is severely restricted. We needed someone with the skills to get in and out quickly, document what they find, and handle security response if necessary. Someone like a Northern Lights operative, Evelyn concluded. Exactly. When you showed up 3 months ago, I flagged your file immediately. The physical resemblance to Archer was subtle, but unmistakable to someone who worked closely with him. But I needed to confirm your capabilities before making contact. So, you provoked me in the demonstration? Walsh nodded. I needed to see if you were really Northern Lights or just a good infiltrator. Only an E-section operative could have executed that reversal from that position. What's your plan? Evelyn asked, turning to Quinlan. Tonight, minimal personnel on site. Walsh gets you access to Sublevel C using his instructor credentials. You document the blacklight operation, locate your brother if possible, and extract any relevant data. We broadcast everything via the emergency system, creating dozens of witnesses among regular personnel, and ensuring the evidence can't be buried. And Colonel Blackwood? Evelyn asked. We'll be detained once we have evidence, Quinlan assured her. She's not the mastermind, just an efficient executor. The real architects are much higher up the chain. Walsh checked his watch. Shift change in 4 hours, that's our window. Evelyn nodded her agreement. After 3 months of careful information gathering, events were suddenly accelerating beyond her original timeline. But the revelation about Archer changed everything. If he was alive, if there was any chance of recovering him from whatever Blacklight had done, she had to take it. I'll need equipment, she said, and a better understanding of the facility layout beyond what I've mapped so far. Walsh moved to the assessment room's control panel and disabled the surveillance cameras. Now we can talk freely. The Oversight Committee has already arranged for Colonel Blackwood to be called to an emergency meeting at headquarters in 1 hour. She'll be gone by the time we move. What about the other Blacklight personnel? Minimal staffing tonight. 2 technicians, 1 medical officer, and 2 security. Nothing you can't handle. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. You seem very confident in my abilities, Master Sergeant. I helped train the Northern Lights E-section, Walsh replied with a hint of professional pride. I know exactly what you're capable of. For the next 3 hours, they plan meticulously. Walsh provided detailed schematics of Sublevel C that weren't included in any official documentation. Quinlan arranged for communication equipment that would interface with the facility's emergency broadcast system. Evelyn studied the security protocols, identifying vulnerabilities and contingencies. As the facility transitioned to night operations and personnel thinned out, Evelyn found herself in an equipment room with Walsh, preparing for the infiltration. The Master Sergeant had exchanged his instructor uniform for tactical gear that would allow greater freedom of movement. Why did you turn against Blacklight? Evelyn asked as she checked her own equipment. You helped create it. Walsh was silent for a moment, his expression darkening. I designed combat training protocols, challenging but ethical programs to create elite soldiers. When they started talking about neural implants and external control mechanisms, I objected. Then I saw the first test subject after integration. A promising recruit named Lawson, someone with real potential. After the procedure, there was nothing behind his eyes. He performed perfectly, followed every order exactly, but the person was gone. Just an empty vessel waiting for commands. His jaw tightened at the memory. That's not creating soldiers, that's creating slaves. I tried to shut it down through official channels, filed reports up the chain of command. Instead, I was transferred to advisory capacity, and replaced by doctors who didn't ask ethical questions. So you contacted oversight, Evelyn concluded. Eventually. First, I tried to sabotage the program from within. That's when I realized how high the protection went. Senators, Joint Chiefs, intelligence directors, all salivating at the prospect of perfectly obedient operatives. When conventional sabotage failed, I began documenting everything, building a case for the Oversight Committee. He checked his watch again. It's time. Blackwood's been called away. The security shift is changing. This is our window. They moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, using Walsh's instructor credentials to access restricted areas without triggering alarms. The few personnel they encountered paid little attention. A senior instructor and a recruit, moving with purpose, raised no suspicions. They reached the secure elevator that led to sublevel C. Walsh placed his palm on the scanner, then entered a complex authorization code. This will get us to the sublevel, but the black light wing itself requires additional clearance I don't have, he explained as the elevator descended. We'll need to improvise from there. The elevator opened onto a sterile white corridor, significantly more advanced than the upper levels of the facility. The lighting was brighter, the air noticeably cooler and heavily filtered. A security station stood at the far end, manned by a single guard who looked up with mild surprise as they approached. Master Sergeant, the guard acknowledged with a nod. I wasn't notified of any training observations tonight. Last-minute directive from Colonel Blackwood, Walsh replied smoothly. She wants updated assessment of Subject 37's combat integration before tomorrow's demonstration. The guard frowned slightly. I don't have that in my access log, sir. The colonel was called to headquarters for an emergency meeting. She issued the directive verbally before leaving. As the guard hesitated, Evelyn shifted her stance subtly, preparing for multiple contingencies. If the guard refused access or called for verification, they would need to move to their backup plan, which was considerably less subtle. After a moment's consideration, the guard nodded. I'll need to note the unscheduled access in the security log. Of course, Walsh agreed. The guard processed their access, and the reinforced door to the blacklight wing slid open. As they stepped through, Evelyn felt a shift in the atmosphere, something beyond the physical characteristics of the space. This was where it happened, where her brother and dozens of others had been transformed into something less than human. The true nature of blacklight was about to be revealed. The blacklight wing defied expectations. Instead of the shadowy, ominous laboratory Evelyn had imagined, the space was clinically pristine and bathed in bright, even lighting. The main corridor branched into several specialized areas: medical bays, monitoring stations, and what appeared to be training rooms with specialized equipment. Subject observation is through here, Walsh directed, leading Evelyn toward a large window that looked into what resembled a high-tech gymnasium. As they approached the viewing area, Evelyn's heart nearly stopped. Through the reinforced glass, she saw a man executing a complex sequence of combat movements with mechanical precision. Though his face showed no emotion, she would have recognized him anywhere. Archer Reese, her brother, alive but fundamentally changed. His movements lacked the fluid adaptability that had once defined his fighting style, replaced by something unnervingly perfect but robotic. Executed at exactly 97.8% efficiency, noted a lab-coated technician who stood nearby, monitoring vitals on a tablet. Consistent with yesterday's performance, no degradation in neural pathway response. Has integration stabilized completely? Asked Walsh, falling easily into the role of program instructor. Yes, much better than earlier subjects, the technician replied without looking up. The third-generation interface adapts to the host neural architecture rather than forcing conformity. Much more sustainable long-term. Evelyn kept her expression neutral as she struggled to process what she was seeing. Archer's eyes held none of the humor or intelligence she remembered, just vacant focus on the tasks he was performing. I'd like a closer look at his combat responsiveness, Walsh said. Can we enter the training area? Of course, Master Sergeant. Subject 37 is scheduled for continuous assessment until Euro 300. The technician led them through a secure door into the training room, where Archer was methodically striking practice targets. Up close, the changes in her brother were even more apparent. His movements were perfect but programmed, lacking any of the creative adaptations that had made him exceptional. When they entered, he didn't react at all, continuing his precisely calibrated routine without acknowledgement. Subject 37, halt program. the technician instructed. Immediately, Archer froze mid-movement, then straightened to a neutral standing position, eyes forward, expression blank. He responds only to direct commands now, the technician explained proudly. No independent action, no questioning of instructions, pure execution. Evelyn moved closer, fighting to maintain her professional facade. What's the extent of the neural modification? The technician, apparently assuming she was part of the program staff, responded readily. Complete integration of the command interface with the subject's motor cortex, decision-making centers, and emotional regulation systems. We can initiate or suppress any action or response remotely. And his original consciousness? Evelyn asked, her voice carefully controlled. Suppressed but preserved, the technician replied. The original personality is still technically present but without access to executive function. Think of it as being permanently locked in a passenger seat while someone else drives. The horror of this explanation washed through Evelyn. Archer was still in there, aware but unable to control his own body or express his own thoughts. A prisoner in his own mind. Impressive progress, Walsh commented, maintaining their cover while subtly positioning himself between the technician and the door. Dr. Kwan would like to see the medical bay where the integration procedures are performed. The technician nodded and led them back into the corridor and toward another section of the facility. The surgical suite is our most advanced area. That's where the neural interfaces are implanted and calibrated. As they walked, Evelyn activated the small recording device concealed in her uniform, documenting everything. The evidence was more disturbing than she had anticipated. Not just experimental training, not just questionable enhancements, but complete override of human autonomy. The medical bay contained 3 surgical beds with advanced neural mapping equipment suspended above each. Holographic displays showed detailed brain scans with specific regions highlighted. Along one wall stood a row of containment units housing what appeared to be the interface devices themselves, delicate networks of nanoscale components designed to integrate with human neural tissue. Each interface is customized for the subject's specific neuroanatomy, the technician explained, warming to his subject as he demonstrated the calibration equipment. The early versions were crude, trying to force standardized responses. The new generation maps to existing neural pathways, leveraging the brain's natural architecture rather than overriding it. More efficient and less detectable, Evelyn noted, gathering as much technical information as possible. Exactly. External observers would never know the subject is operating under command protocol. Even sophisticated brain scans would only show slightly enhanced neural efficiency. Walsh had positioned himself near a computer terminal. What's the rejection rate with the new interface? Less than 5% now, the technician said proudly. Though physical integration is only part of the process, the psychological conditioning is equally important. Subjects with strong-willed personalities or deeply held ethical frameworks require additional preparation before they accept the interface. Like Subject 37? Evelyn asked. The technician glanced toward another door. Yes, he was particularly resistant. Dr. Levitt can explain the conditioning protocols better. She's with another subject now, if you'd like to observe. Walsh nodded, and they followed the technician through to yet another section of the facility. This room was darker, dominated by a central chair that resembled a more ominous version of a dentist's seat. Restraints built into the armrests and headrest suggested subjects weren't always willing participants. A woman in a white lab coat stood adjusting equipment beside a young man strapped into the chair. His eyes were wide with fear, his body straining against the restraints. Dr. Levitt, Master Sergeant Walsh, and Dr. Kwan are here to observe the conditioning process, the technician announced. The doctor barely glanced up from her work. You're just in time. Subject 44 is demonstrating resistance to preliminary neural mapping. We're implementing the accelerated compliance protocol. The young man in the chair locked eyes with Evelyn, a desperate plea evident in his expression. Please, he gasped. This isn't right. They're going to erase me. Dr. Levitt adjusted a control, and the subject's body went rigid, his face contorting in pain, though no sound emerged. Pain response management, she explained clinically. We've found that controlled discomfort combined with relief conditioning accelerates acceptance of the interface. The subject learns that resistance creates pain, while compliance brings relief. Evelyn felt sick as she documented everything, This wasn't training or enhancement. It was torture and mind control disguised as military advancement. Her brother had been subjected to this. Dozens of others, too. Fascinating, she managed to say, maintaining her cover while positioning her recording device for optimal capture. And this process is standardized for all subjects? With individual calibration, yes, Dr. Levitt replied. Colonel Blackwood has authorized accelerated processing for the next group. The Oversight Committee is visiting next week, and she wants impressive results. Walsh caught Evelyn's eye briefly. They had what they needed: clear evidence of unethical procedures, confirmation of neural control implementation, and even mention of Blackwood's direct involvement. Now, they needed to broadcast it. I believe we've seen enough for a preliminary assessment, Walsh said. Dr. Kwan has all the data she needs for her report to Colonel Blackwood. As they turned to leave, the door to the conditioning room opened. Colonel Blackwood herself stood in the entrance, flanked by 2 security officers in full tactical gear. Her expression was coldly furious. I received an interesting call from headquarters, she said, her voice dangerously calm. There was no emergency meeting scheduled, which made me wonder why someone would want me away from the facility tonight. Evelyn assessed the situation rapidly. 2 armed guards plus Blackwood, the technician behind them, Dr. Levitt by the control panel, 5 opponents, 1 potential civilian casualty still strapped in the chair. Master Sergeant Walsh, Blackwood continued, you've been feeding information to the Oversight Committee for months. Did you really think we wouldn't monitor their communications? Walsh's posture shifted subtly into combat readiness. It's over, Colonel. We have documented evidence of everything. Neural control implementation, forced compliance conditioning, complete violation of human rights and military ethics. Evidence that will never leave this room, Blackwood replied. As for you, Operative Reese, your infiltration was impressive but ultimately futile, though I'm grateful you've revealed the continued existence of Echo Contingency. We'd suspected some Northern Lights elements survived the purge. Evelyn calculated her options, identifying multiple attack vectors and escape routes. This isn't a training program, Colonel. It's mind control and torture. It's the future of warfare, Blackwood countered. Imagine operatives who never question orders, never hesitate, never break under pressure. Perfect soldiers. They're not soldiers, Walsh argued. They're puppets, and what you're doing violates every ethical standard in military science. Ethics evolve, Blackwood said dismissively, just like warfare. She turned to the security officers. Take them both to conditioning. Subject 37's sister will make an excellent comparative case study for familial neural architecture. The security officers moved forward, weapons raised. Evelyn tensed, preparing to engage. Then Walsh gave her the signal they had discussed in their contingency planning, a subtle gesture indicating it was time for the backup plan. Show them what Northern Lights operatives can really do, he said clearly. Evelyn understood immediately. This wasn't just about fighting their way out. It was about creating witnesses. Walsh had triggered the emergency broadcast system with his last statement, sending their confrontation to every screen in the facility. Moving with the fluid precision of her full Northern Lights training, Evelyn disabled both security officers before they could react. Non-lethal but decisive strikes that left them unconscious on the floor. Walsh simultaneously subdued the technician, while Dr. Levitt backed against her control panel in shock. Blackwood reached for her sidearm, but Evelyn closed the distance between them with impossible speed, disarming the colonel with a technique that Northern Lights had perfected and Blacklight could only imitate. "What are you doing?" Blackwood demanded, as Evelyn secured her wrists with restraints taken from one of the fallen security officers. "Creating witnesses," Walsh answered, moving to the main control terminal. "Everything that's happened since we entered this room has been broadcasting to every monitor in the facility. Every recruit, every instructor, every support staff member is watching Colonel Blackwood explain how she's turning soldiers into mind-controlled weapons." The color drained from Blackwood's face as she realized the implications. "You can't do this. The program has presidential authorization." "Does it?" came a new voice from the doorway. Director Quinlan stood there with several armed oversight agents. "Because the president's chief of staff just confirmed that while Blacklight was authorized as an enhanced training program, neural control implementation was explicitly forbidden in the original directive." Evelyn kept Blackwood secured while Walsh accessed the main Blacklight control system. On the monitors throughout the room, they could see their own confrontation playing on screens throughout the facility. Hundreds of witnesses now knew the truth. "What about the subjects?" Evelyn asked, her thoughts on Archer. "Can the interface be removed?" Dr. Levitt, seeing which way the wind was blowing, spoke up quickly. "The physical components, yes. The neural pathways will require rehabilitation, but recovery is possible with the proper protocols." "You'll develop those protocols," Quinlan informed her. "Your cooperation will be considered during sentencing." Within hours, the facility had transformed. Military police and oversight committee members had taken control of the Blacklight wing. Colonel Blackwood was led away in handcuffs, the program officially terminated under direct orders from the Joint Chiefs, who had been presented with the undeniable evidence of ethical violations. Medical teams began the process of assessing the Blacklight subjects, developing protocols for removing the neural interfaces, and beginning rehabilitation. In the medical bay, Evelyn stood beside her brother as doctors explained the procedure they were preparing. "The physical components can be extracted safely," the lead physician explained, "but the neural pathways have been reinforced along specific patterns. He'll need significant rehabilitation to reestablish normal cognitive function and autonomous decision-making." "Will he be himself again?" Evelyn asked, the question that mattered most. "His core consciousness is intact," the doctor assured her. "With time and proper support, yes, he should recover his sense of self and autonomous function." Archer lay on the medical bed, his eyes still vacant but occasionally focusing on Evelyn's face with the first hints of recognition. The conditioning was beginning to fade without reinforcement, allowing glimpses of the person trapped inside. Walsh entered the medical bay, now wearing the insignia that revealed his actual rank and position as an oversight operative. "They're beginning the procedure for the first 3 subjects. Archer is scheduled for tomorrow morning when the neurosurgeon arrives from Walter Reed." "Thank you," Evelyn said, meaning it for more than just the update. "Your cover was deeper than mine. Years of working within Blacklight, waiting for the right moment." "Someone had to stay on the inside," he replied. "After Northern Lights was shut down, I knew something would take its place. Something potentially worse if the wrong people guided its development." "Northern Lights was shut down because we feared its graduates were too independent," came another voice. A distinguished older man in a general's uniform entered the medical bay. "We were wrong. That independence just saved dozens of soldiers from becoming puppets." Evelyn recognized him immediately, General Harrington, former director of special programs, and one of the original architects of Northern Lights. "Sir," she acknowledged, instinctively straightening her posture. "At ease, Operative Reese," the general said. "Echo contingency has served its purpose well. Your infiltration provided the evidence we needed to shut down Blacklight permanently." "What happens to the subjects?" she asked. "Full rehabilitation, complete medical support, and honorable discharges with full benefits if they choose to leave service," Harrington assured her. "Those who wish to remain in the military will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis once their recovery is complete." 1 week later, Evelyn stood on the academy parade ground where a formal ceremony was underway. The entire recruit class had assembled, along with all instructors and support personnel. At the center of the formation stood the recovered Blacklight subjects, those who had already had their interfaces removed and begun the rehabilitation process. Archer was among them, standing with military precision that was now his choice rather than programmed response. The vacancy in his eyes had been replaced by awareness, though he still struggled with certain autonomous functions. The doctors had explained that complete recovery would take months, possibly years, but the core of his personality had survived the ordeal. Director Quinlan addressed the assembled personnel, officially acknowledging the Blacklight violation and the heroism of those who exposed it. As he spoke, Evelyn noticed Harlow Damari approaching from the side of the formation. "I never saw what was right in front of me," Harlow said quietly when she reached Evelyn. "None of us did. We bought into the competition so completely that we missed the recruits who were disappearing. Thank you for showing us all what was happening." The apology was genuine, Evelyn realized. Sometimes the most difficult recognition to achieve was acknowledging one's own blindness. "The strongest among us are often those no one notices until they choose to be noticed," Evelyn replied. After the ceremony, as the formal recognition concluded, Evelyn declined the medals that were offered. "The credit should go to those who didn't survive Blacklight," she insisted, "and to those still fighting to recover their autonomy. Walsh found her as she prepared to leave with Archer, who was being transferred to a specialized rehabilitation facility. "You could have completed your mission without exposing your training," he noted. "That day in the training hall, you could have maintained your cover, found another way." Evelyn considered this. "Sometimes being seen is more important than staying hidden," she replied. "Some injustices can only be fought in the open." 6 months later, a specialized rehabilitation center outside Washington, D.C., hosted an unusual training session. Evelyn moved through a series of Northern Lights techniques, demonstrating movements designed to reinforce autonomous decision-making and neural pathway development. Around her, former Blacklight subjects followed her lead, including Archer, whose movements had begun to regain their natural fluidity. "The key is making each decision consciously," she explained. "Feel the difference between programmed response and chosen action. Your body remembers both, but only one is truly yours." Archer completed the sequence, a genuine smile crossing his face as he successfully executed a complex maneuver through his own volition rather than external command. Each small victory in regaining his autonomy was celebrated. "Neural pathways are strengthening along self-directed patterns," noted the rehabilitation specialist observing the session. "Remarkable progress." As the session concluded, Evelyn watched the former subjects talking among themselves, exchanging experiences and supporting each other's recovery. What Blacklight had tried to strip away, humanity, choice, individual identity, was gradually returning. From the observation area, General Harrington watched with approval. "Northern Lights always understood what Blacklight never grasped," he commented as Evelyn joined him. "True strength comes from autonomy, not control. The best soldiers are those who choose their path, not those forced upon it." "What happens now?" Evelyn asked. "With echo contingency, with the Northern Lights protocols." "That's partially up to you," Harrington replied. "There will always be programs that cross ethical lines. We need people who can recognize those boundaries and defend them." Beyond the rehabilitation center windows, the world continued unaware of how close it had come to a future of mind-controlled operatives. The public would never know the full details of Blacklight or its termination. But in this room, among these recovering subjects, something profound had been preserved: the essential human right to self-determination. Archer approached, moving more naturally than he had in months. "The doctors say I might be cleared for limited duty in another 6 weeks, he told Evelyn. "Not field operations, but possibly training or advisory roles." "Are you sure that's what you want?" she asked. "I need to help others recover what I almost lost," he replied with conviction. Blacklight wasn't the first program to cross these lines, and it won't be the last. Someone needs to stand watch. As former Blacklight subjects continued their rehabilitation exercises, the camera pulled back to reveal the full scope of the facility. Dozens of previously unremarkable people, now recognized for their extraordinary capabilities and resilience. Each one represented a battle won, not just against physical conditioning, but against the very idea that human autonomy was an acceptable sacrifice for military efficiency. In the training area, Evelyn guided another group through exercises designed to strengthen independent decision-making. The protocols she taught weren't just physical techniques, but affirmations of personal choice. Each movement a declaration that these individuals own themselves again. "The hardest part isn't regaining physical control," she explained to a struggling participant. "It's trusting your own decisions again after having that trust violated. Each choice you make rebuilds that trust with yourself." As the rehabilitation program continued its work, the lessons of Blacklight reverberated through military and intelligence communities. The oversight committees strengthened their monitoring of classified programs. New ethical guidelines were established for neural research and military applications. And most importantly, the value of autonomous, ethically grounded operators was reaffirmed at the highest levels. What had begun with a single moment in a training hall, a supposedly unremarkable recruit revealing extraordinary capabilities, had evolved into a fundamental reassessment of military ethics and human dignity. In exposing herself, Evelyn had exposed a system that had lost its moral compass, reminding everyone involved that true strength came not from control, but from the conscious choice to serve with integrity. For the former Blacklight subjects, the path to full recovery would be long, but each day brought new progress, new moments of genuine autonomy, new affirmations that they were more than the sum of their programming. And in those moments of genuine choice, they discovered what Evelyn had known all along, that the most powerful force isn't the ability to control others, but the courage to stand firmly in one's own truth, even when the world has conspired to bury it.